I'm Neely Schlosser, and I'm from Department of Commerce, and I work in performance and reporting. I've been here about, I don't know, 15, 20 years doing performance for youth, adult, and dislocated worker. But today we're going to talk about youth performance, and we're going to do it at a very high level. WIOA was authorized to become WIOA, and we came out with new performance measures, and so this is all fairly new to us. We have some different ones, and so we're going to talk about just the youth performance measures today. Natasha, can you make my screen bigger for the PowerPoint, or?
Yep, I sure can.
Okay, that would be
and
great.
Then you can advance it using the arrows in the bottom left-hand corner.
Okay, great. I also have here Paula Berry, and she's worked in performance with me for about 10 years, and Jim Potts. He's been out, I think he did some training for everyone last August on eligibility for all the grantees. If you have any questions during the PowerPoint, you can just type them in the chat box, and we'll answer them as we go on. Like I said before, this is a very high view of performance. There are a lot of nuances that get into the nitty-gritty of it, but we're just going to go over the main measures right now that you need to be looking for with your grant. So with that said, this is just what I was talking about, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. It used to be WIOA. What they did was they combined Title 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is just kind of an overview for you to look at, but you might want to read it when you're going through your PowerPoint. And the next slide is, what is WIOA Youth Performance? And this is the section of the law where they have primary indicators of performance that were established. The indicators we're going to be talking about today are the entered employment rates, the credential, and then we also have an indicator of measurable skills gain. Right now we aren't negotiating a goal with Department of Labor for the measurable skills gain, but we are collecting all the information for it, and we'll go through that a little bit later on. So why they developed the primary indicators, it's so when participants go through the program, they can set goals and use historical outcomes to see how successful they are in serving the customers in the youth program. So every 2 years, and we're getting ready to do this for 2018 and 2019, we negotiate goals with the federal government for the state, and we need to meet 90% of that negotiated goal. Right now, this is all new to us, so the goals that we've negotiated, the first 2 years were just based on historical data where we changed the outcomes to the new definition outcomes. But as we collect more data, we're going to get into the negotiation, and then eventually there'll be, if you don't meet your goal as a state, then we have sanctions. That's why, and the sanctions are financial, and so that's why performance is so important. Okay, the youth definitions of a customer, and this is what you guys are familiar with. We have an inquirant, and that's the application is not completed and certified in IWDS. Then there's an applicant, and this is IWDS youth application is completed, and the customer has been certified. And you don't become a participant or registrant until you're enrolled in your first service. And this is what Jim had come out to talk to you about. Do you want to say anything more about that?
Well, the big thing to understand is your client wouldn't fall into the outcomes until they become registrants. So once they're registrants, that's when kind of the rubber meets the road. That's when you're going to be held accountable for this individual throughout the process. So if they disappear on you or they stop engaging, it's no replacing them. They're in your outcomes. So once they become a registrant, they are yours all the way through, and you're going to be held accountable for their outcomes that Neely will talk about.
Correct. And definition of a participant, and that's a reportable individual who receives services other than self-service or information only. And they're eligible, which they have satisfied all applicable programmatic requirements, and including eligibility. So you need the eligibility determination, and then you have your assessment, and then the ISS, which is an actual service that we have, which is the first service that you'll be giving the youth. So that once those have been completed, then you're going to be on the hook for these customers and your performance outcomes. So they're going to go into your measures as what we call a denominator, and then if they're a positive, they'll go into the numerator, which you don't need to worry about those terms at all. So once a youth has become a registered participant, they will be included in performance, as Jim said. Even if a grantee has lost contact with the youth participants, they will become part of performance. For example, if a grantee determines at the beginning of the grant they'd be serving 50 youth, and then you register a youth that were determined eligible and received services, if they received that ISS and they had eligibility determination and you did an assessment, they're going to be included in the planned number of participants that you had your plan that you did with your grant. So if a youth drops out of the program and they've been determined eligible and received service, they'll be included in the performance pool. So the other is if you said you were going to serve 50 people in your grant and you can't find someone, but they're already included and they're already registered, they're just going to be a negative in your outcomes. We don't go and get another youth to replace that youth. I think that was a question that some of the grantees had before. Anyone have any questions so far? I can wait a minute for you to type in, or... Okay, we'll keep going. Okay, another definition that's important is a program exit. This occurs when the youth participant no longer receives services for 90 days and has no additional services scheduled. So the date of the program exit will be the last date of service. And what it is, you're supposed to wait the 90 days to see if they have any other service. If you know there isn't any planned, then your date is the last day of your last service. So it goes retroactive back to the 90 days.
But this is also registering services, which you would want to do after you know you're completed with your client. Like, say I'm your client, you're finished serving me today, which is the 14th of March. You would enroll me tomorrow in follow-up as the 15th. But that's not a registering service. So what's looking for exit are registering services. So follow-up's not a registering service. It's something you're going to do after the client's completed with his or her services. So that's a kind of a good indicator. If you know somebody's finished, then you would just open up their follow-up service.
Right, and there's services and follow-up supportive services that can also be used during that follow-up period. Okay, the youth primary indicators of performance. Where are they? Okay, well there's 4 primary indicators of performance. The PowerPoint should be out here for you to print as well. It was on my PowerPoint. I don't know why they're not showing up. The first indicator, yeah, I didn't move it. The first
Mary, do you want me to? I know it's messed up.
they were in the blue box that were transported into there. That's okay. It just has.
I can bring up the PDF.
That's all right. I'm talking about it, Natasha. When they print it out, hopefully it'll be on there. Okay. The first primary indicator of performance is employment rate second quarter after exit, and exit is after a program exit. So what is in this measure is everyone that comes into the program. It's the percentage of all your participants who are in education or training activities, during the second, the percentage of youth participants. So all the youth participants that come into the program, they're going to be in this employment rate second quarter after exit. And they measure it 2 quarters after you exit the program. That's why it's real important to know when the customer's leaving the program if they're on the right track and the plan, and that's where follow-up will be included. So it's everyone that comes into the program that are youth, the percentage of them who are in education or training or employed at the end of the second quarter after exit. So for youth employment, it's called an employment rate, but for youth it's really employment and education rate, because what we would like is for these youth to go on to post-secondary education. Or if they're still in secondary education, they would still be a positive in this measure. So the percentage of youth that are coming to your program, so everyone in your pool, if you have 50 customers, the ones that go on to education and training or that are employed in the second quarter after exit. It's only measured in the second quarter. So successful outcomes include employment, secondary education, post-secondary, skills training in the second quarter. So wage records, what we do is we have an agreement with IDES, and what we do is take the wage records from the employers that they receive, and we download them into the IWDS system on a quarterly basis, so 4 times a year. And if an employer has reported any information, then those wage records come into the file and they populate, so we'll know that you're employed in the second quarter after exit.
And this is where it's key that you have your client's correct Social Security number, because that's how it's coming in. Those wages are coming in from Illinois Department of Employment Security based on your client's Social Security number. So it's looking in IWDS compared to wages reported to Illinois Department of Employment Security, and then it'll be attached to your client based on his or her SOCH. So I know at some point we had some folks putting in false SOCHs, putting in incorrect information. It's really essential that you have that correct SOCH for your clients.
Correct. We also have information that comes in from out of state. It's the wage interchange system, wage record interchange system, and it pulls information from other states like the IDES records too. That everything is private in that, so you won't be able to see any wages that come in to the wage record, or we won't. But that information from other states is also pulled in as well, and it's based on the Social Security number again.
But here's something I do want to pass on. I know one of our grantees had a case of an individual who had finished the program, their education component, and they moved to Alaska. Well, it's important to stay in contact with that client because they're still in your performance outcomes. And guess what? If they get a job in Alaska and have wages, you can get credit for those. So that's important for you to make sure you stay in communication because it's not like they're lost. They're still eligible if they're employed second quarter post-exit, if they're going to post-secondary school in second quarter post-exit. So just because they've moved out of your area, if you've stayed in contact with them, you can still get credit for those types of things if the individual still meets those criteria.
good point. That's where supplemental wage information would be allowed. If you know they have a job, and you know that, like, for example, gyms, they're out of state. You already have that information. You'd want to go ahead and enter that into the system because maybe the employer didn't Alaska is not part of this interchange system. Maybe the employer didn't put the wages into the RWIS system. So this is where you'd want to go in and put your supplemental wage information, and you can also, along with just verifying that they're employed, like a letter from the employer or a pay stub, you can also include their wages in that. That's something new that we can also include their wages. Okay, the employment rate fourth quarter after exit is exactly like the employment rate in the second quarter after exit. It's measured just in the fourth quarter. You don't need to be, I'm not even going to say that because you don't know the other measures. So what they do is they look at someone that the fourth quarter after they exit the program, and they see if they're in education and training or employed. The supplemental wage records are allowed to verify employment. And then once again, this is the same as quarter two. You need to, this is really key for this fourth quarter because this is a year after they leave the program, or it could be up to a year. So this is really important for the follow-up to stay in touch with your customer, especially if you're using that supplemental wage information. And also, if they're enrolled in education, you can get credit for that over up to a year after they exit the program. So that's really important for the follow-up of each customer. Okay, our primary indicator number 3 is credential attainment rate. Define percentage of youth participants enrolled in education or training program, this excludes on-the-job training and customized training, who attain a recognized post-secondary credential or secondary school diploma, and it's within 1 year after the exit of the program. This only includes those who receive training or education. So this measure excludes all OJT or customized training. They're not going to be in this measure, but they'll be in a different measure. Credentials can be obtained during the program or within 1 year, 365 days following the exit. If a participant obtains a secondary school diploma or equivalent, they must also be employed or in an education training program that would lead to a post-secondary credential within a year after exit. So this is also really important with what Jim was talking about with the follow-up, is you can still get credit. I mean, preferably you want the customer to receive the credential before they leave your program. That's the best rule of practice. But we're just saying that you can receive this credential up to a year after you leave the program. If you achieve multiple credentials, it should be reported on the highest credential attained for that period of participation. So if you've gone through a series of credentials, let's say you started with step 1, 2, 3, 4, you can indicate all these credentials, but you only get one credential is only counted for the program year. So it'll be the highest credential of that step that will be counted. So it's only counted for one participation period for that program year.
There's some questions over here.
Okay.
We asked questions about how should they enter info with, I presume from Tanisha, that would be with supplemental information?
Right.
Or maybe this is just in general. Somebody gets a job. Once they complete the program, they gain employment. What's the processes for recording the employment?
Well, For recording the employment in IWDS, so I don't know how this would go through Illinois WorkNet.
This is probably something that if Tara, Tammy, and Natasha would probably want to address, how you want the providers, the grantees, to record the employment obtained while in participation. I know what the people doing IWDS needs to do, but what's the process for in WorkNet?
Natasha says they will use work site placement. That is a topic for next week. So we'll talk about that. But the main thing is you have to have the verification in your file, your hard copy file, and then we'll get into the specifics. But there is a place to enter that information. It's called a supplemental screen or quarter one supplemental outcome screen. And the information will probably transfer from WorkNet into those screens after we figure that out. So Natasha will talk about the place to record permanent employment in WorkNet next week.
Then Dawn has a question, what is a customized training program? Dawn, that's a mutual program that somebody has built with a training program or provider. So it's not something that's an off-the-shelf. It's something that's a lot of times merging different forms of training.
So like if you have a community college and you have 10 students that want to learn something about a specific IT or a specific healthcare, and you have people that come together to build this certain program, it's got different, it couldn't be just like a CNA program. It's CNA plus something else that is specialized and customized. That's what the customized training is. I think we might have a definition that I can give to Tammy and Tara to send out.
That was the question.
Okay, also I have a link here on the Teagle, and I can also have them send this out to you. This is the Teagle that talks about all the training programs or all the performance measures, and just has a little, it has some examples and things like that. It's more in-depth, but it's probably something that eventually down the line you guys will want to look at.
You want to talk about that, though?
What?
Did you speak about the first portions of it?
Of what?
Go back a slide.
I already talked about that.
You spoke on those? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so also for the credential attainment rate, who's in this indicator? So all in-school youth are included in the credential attainment rate. So if you're in school, once you go through the program, you need to receive some sort of credential to be a positive in this. It could be your high school diploma, the other training programs you're going through, but all in-school youth are going to be in this measure. So not all out-of-school youth are included in the measure. The ones that are included, they're in an occupational skills training program. They're in secondary education at or above the 9th grade level, post-secondary education, adult education, youth build, and job corps. So these are the out-of-school youth that are going to be in this measure. Okay, credential attainment. What type of credentials count? A recognized post-secondary credential is defined as a credential consisting of an industry-recognized certificate or certification, a state certificate of completion of an apprenticeship, a license recognized by the state or federal government, or an associate or baccalaureate degree. Such certificates must recognize technology or industry occupational skills for that specific industry occupation rather than general skills related to safety, hygiene. That's where the CPR, CNA come in. Even if such general skills certificates are broadly required to qualify for entry-level employment or advancement in employment. So they're being kind of stickler on this a little bit with the rules of DOL. So the types of credentials that you can receive are secondary school diploma or its recognized equivalent, associate, bachelor, graduate, occupational licensure, certificates, including registered apprenticeship and career and tech education, occupational certification, so there's a licensure and a certification, and then other recognized certificates of industry sufficient to qualify for entry level or advancement in employment. Primary indicator number 3, credential attainment examples. So a CNA license is an example of an occupational licensure, and an automotive service excellence, ASC certification, is an example of an occupational certification. So those are the differences for those. When you need to, the licensure you have to take your exam for, usually by the state, and they give you your license. I know with nursing license, that's what they do.
And those are going to be copies that you're going to want to make sure you have in the hard copy in your file. Anything that you're recording, taking credit for a credential, when it comes time for monitoring or validation or verification, there needs to be a hard copy maintained that will support anything that you're loading in to workNet that gets put into IWDS.
Okay, certificates that do count, that do not document the measurable, I thought I had the do first. You did the dues, yes. No. Okay, certificates that do not document the measurable technical industry, and these are ones that we've kind of already talked to you about at the beginning of the grant. OSHA 10, the 10-hour course, Uncommon Safety and Health, Work Readiness Certificates, and Food Handlers, CPR, First Aid. Now these these certificates are fine to receive, especially if it's on, the progress of going up to a higher credential. But these alone will not stand on its own as a credential. And that's also the completion of orientation and mobility training, Workforce Development Board certificate. Okay, now this is an indicator that is new for youth, adult and dislocated worker, for our Title I program. Right now we are collecting this information to report. Actually, IWDS has, we've made some changes and we're getting ready to put it out into production. We will not negotiate a goal for this measure. The state will not, because we don't have enough historical background to negotiate a goal for this. So, but we definitely will be collecting this information, and it's really important to report this information, because this will eventually, within a couple years, it'll give us a good baseline of data for our youth customers and for an indicator that we would negotiate for this measure. So the percentage of participants, the measurable skill gain is, it's looking at you through the program. So the percentage of participants who during a program year are in education or training that leads to a recognized post-secondary credential or employment, and who are achieving measurable skill gains, defined as documented academic, technical, occupational, or other forms of progress. So it's a progress towards such a credential or employment. We only count one time in the reporting period, and so this measure isn't exit-based. It has a reporting period year, which on any given year is 7/1, July 1st through 6/30 of that year. So when you come into the program, like let's say you come into the program on 8/1, you have until 6/30, the end of the reporting period, to get that measurable skill gain. Now, if you come into the program in June, then you only have till the end of June to receive the measurable skill gain. So it's not exit-based. You would just go into the pool for the next year. Each year you'll have to, each year you will have to be expected to get a skill gain. But there's 5 different ways and 5 different gains you can receive. So, and this is for youth participants who are in education and training. And these, it's the same participants are included that are included in the Credential Indicator. So all in-school youth, and then not all of the out-of-school youth, but the list below that was included for the credential. The occupational skills training, secondary, post-secondary, adult ed youth. So the types of measurable skill gain, there's 5 types. So the first type is achievement of at least one educational functioning level if receiving instruction below post-secondary education. So there's actually 3 ways to achieve it, but the one way that we're looking at in this grant is you have your assessment test, you'll have your pre-test, and then you'll have a post-test. And if you make an educational functioning level gain, then that will be considered a measurable skill, and it will be in that program year. You only need 1 gain. You can receive 10 gains, you can receive 5 gains, but only 1 gain will count for each program year. Did you want to say anything about that? Yeah, you'll be able to enter all of the gains, and you want to be sure and enter all the gains, but it will only be because that's a story on that customer. But for reporting purposes, it'll be 1 gain per program for the reporting period of that measure. So an attainment of a secondary school diploma or equivalent is also a gain. Secondary or post-secondary transcript for sufficient number of credit hours. So for the secondary, it's a transcript or report card for 1 semester. So that they completed the credit hours for 1 semester that they were enrolled. That's a measurable skill gain. Post-secondary, at least 12 hours per semester, or for part-time students, total of at least 12 hours over 2 completed semesters during the 12-month period. And actually, it should be, so for part-time it would be 6 hours. I just doubled it into the 12. So for the 2 semesters, but it would be 6 hours a semester. And that is just, and all you have to do, it would be a transcript that they were enrolled or a report card. And then for the post-secondary, the same, that they had completed, so it could be their grades, that they had completed those hours. And that is what you would put in the file to verify this skill gain. And also you'd want to case note all this information as you go through. So the 4th type of skill gain is a satisfactory or better progress report toward established milestones, such as completion of OJT, these are examples, or 1 year of apprenticeship, or a similar milestone from an employer or training provider that's providing the training. So if you're going through a training program, and let's say the training program is 6 months long, and with your career planner you set up at 3 months, you have to achieve this many steps through that training program, and if you achieve it, then that would be a measurable skill gain. That's a milestone going through that program. And that's something that, your ISS is a fluid document, but that you set up with your career planner at the beginning. And then also a successful passage of an exam that's required for a particular occupation. That would be the CNA, that would be the licensure for a nurse, if you had a type of certification or anything for a welder, things like that would go into this. We also had the high school diploma that you could include in this, the passage of an exam that's required. So exams, and also diploma could go here as well.
There was a question from Tanisha over to the left. It's about the last slide about uploading a transcript on a youth school that graduates from high school as well as college credential attainment.
Yeah. But, I mean, if they graduate high school, then, I mean, that's a measurable skill gain, and that's also a credential that you'll receive. And then if they go on to college, as well as college credential attainment, I mean, it just depends on in the program year. You want to upload all the information and tell the story on the customer. So yes, I would upload all that information. It's and it definitely should be in the file because it just depends on when they achieve it. The measurable skill gain, I mean, that would be if you graduate high school, you have a gain there, and you also have your credential. And then when you go on to college, that gives you your entered employment in the second quarter, and then depending if they're still in college, in the fourth quarter. So yeah, all the information we want you to upload. Report cards.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
You said it's hard to get it official.
Official transcripts can be challenging to retrieve from the college. What's the process if a student has a hold on their account? I don't even know.
Status report. Report card.
I mean, report cards.
Letter from it.
Hold on a second.
I think the thing that's important to understand is the transcript or one of the choices. When what Jacob's speaking about here, if there's a hold, so it sounds like somebody that didn't pay their bill, so they're not probably going to receive their transcript. They're not going to give them maybe report cards. Not going to give them diploma. I think those have to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis because you're going to have something to support a credential that's claimed. But if a client already has a diploma, you wouldn't also need the transcript to verify his or her graduation. You have that. To me, the transcript's going to come in play, or the report card is going to come in play between semesters, before the diploma's coming. If somebody is enrolled in post-secondary education, and at the end of December we get their first report card that shows that he or she passed their scores, then we'd use that. So it's different things depending on the circumstances of the client. Val had a question, Neely, about could work experience count as a MSG if it's set up as a milestone? I think that's something you might have to research and look at.
Yeah, I am, because we've had this question before, and it was fairly specific that work experience wasn't included in this. But Val, I will get back to you because I'm trying to get an answer. I had this question last week, so we're still trying to get an answer from that. It just, I mean, it just depends. If so, I'll get back. I don't want to give you the wrong answer, so I will get back to you on that, Val. Okay. And that was it. Those are the, what?
The back one. They measure 4, so that's the last one?
Yeah, successful passage of an exam or your diploma would go there as well.
Okay.
So the 5, going back through the 5 indicators the achievement at least one educational functioning level if receiving instruction below post-secondary education level.
And what that's speaking about is, like Neely had said, your clients each took a math and reading assessment test score prior to your participation. So then you'd give them a second test. It could be called a post-assessment test. So it's after the pre-assessment, and then you're looking at their measurements. So if they raise one functioning level, if you notice when you look at the scores, when you load in TABE scores, they give a grade level equivalency, and then they give a functioning level. So if they raise one functioning level, then you're going to get that measurable skill gain on either the math or the reading test.
And that automatically would give you the gain if you did have that increase in that program year.
Yeah, there's nothing else you'll do other than record that test and then make sure you have that hard copy of the test. Because that, again, when monitors come out, validation comes to play, they're going to be looking for the hard copy scoring sheet that shows the date of the test, the type of the test, the scoring, the scale score. So you'd have that to support, but you wouldn't have to do anything else other than just load that post-secondary test score in there, or test results in there.
Okay, does OSHA 10 count as an MSG? If you have something set up as in your training, in your individual service strategy, and you're going through to be, I don't know, where the end goal is your warehouse worker in your training program, and you need to go through these milestones and receive OSHA 10, OSHA 30, and something else, then I could see that being a measurable skill gain. It will not be a credential. So, but it is not, OSHA 10 is not credential attainment.
Training milestone.
So, or credential attainment, no, it would, that's one of those, and it's back on the slide that shows you what is not a credential. Maybe we could use unofficial, I don't know, okay, we're in school youth, okay. In school youth manufacturing training, so all of your, the in school youth will go into the credential and the measurable skill gain program. So you have 5 ways that you could get the measurable skill gain. You only need one. So if they go through the program and they complete the program, then you have your skill, and then you probably already have your credential. If they graduate college, you would have a diploma credential there as well. So there's different options. And if anyone ever has any questions, I put my email on the back where you can just ask me questions as you come across them. I know this is all new, and it's kind of an overarching, simple, trying to be simple way of explaining the performance measures. OSHA cannot be used as a credential. It can be part of getting to your finer credential, but as standalone, OSHA is not a credential. And that is straight from Department of Labor. OSHA is not a credential. The CPR first aid is not a credential. And food handlers is not a credential. It was on this slide.
Jamila had questions about the TABE test. So yeah, Jamila, that's one of the ways that you can get a measurable skill gain is from a pre-test and then a post-test. So you'd want to make sure it's in the same year, and keep in mind the program year is from July 1st through June 30th. So for any of your clients that you brought in after July 1st, which are all the folks participating in this grant, you're going to want to have a post-assessment test if you're looking for a measurable skill gain for raising their scores. You'd want to have a post-assessment test prior to on or before 6/30/2018. Did that answer your question?
And you need to use the same pre and post test. So you have to use the same test that you tested on the pre-test as the post test. Now, let's say they come into the program after July 1st, you pre-test them, you post-test them before the end of June, and they're still going to do another year in the program, then you can use that post-test score as their next pre-test score for the next year if they don't exit. Now, if they're going through the program and they exit the program before the end of June 30th, you only have till June 30th for them to receive that gain. For adult education, there's other ways to get the EFL. The question is, for adult education, an H high school equivalency only counts as an MSG for students in the highest EFL. Is that true for us as well? I mean, anyone above ninth grade is in this, and what it says is, state that offers adult high school programs that lead to a secondary school diploma or a recognized equivalent may measure and report educational gains through the awarding of credits or Carnegie units. States that report an educational functioning level gain for participants who exit a program below the post-secondary level and enroll in post-secondary education training during the program year. A program below post-secondary level applies to participants enrolled in a basic education program. All they mention about the adult ed is the Carnegie unit. Secondary school diploma refers to regular high school as defined. Val, does that answer your question or not? I mean, I'm not sure. I would imagine it would be the highest EFL. You could still get a measurable skill gain for each gain you receive until you're no longer basic skills deficient.
And Tanisha has a question about post-paid. Does it only need if you don't have any other measurable skill gains, which she's asking? It can be used at any time. I mean, one of the things that our clients, I would think you would have a pattern of part of your services of giving each of the clients the pre and post tests. But as far as just for measurements, if you have one in a calendar year, or excuse me, in a program year, then you're going to get credit for that one. So,
right. I mean, I would think that you'd want a pre and post test to see that they've made strides, and that, I mean, if they're basic skills deficient, out of school youth, if they're basic skills deficient, you'd want them to no longer be basic skills deficient. So, but yeah, I guess the answer would be yes. I mean, if you don't have any other gains, and that's then you need to get that post test in there. I would just think that, like what Jim said, you had a pattern that you give with customers. The measurable gains, how would it impact our performance goals? We don't have a goal negotiated, so it won't impact you as far as not reaching a goal, but we need all the information, just like you're doing this measure, documented, like we do have a goal. So this is something that you need to collect information for and actually report in the system and their outcomes.
If the state's awarded a grant, and these are the ways that the state are going to be measured by outcomes of registrants. So it would be, when a post-review of a grant, even though if you don't have an outcome goal set, it still would be looked at to see how your client base did. But again, there's not a goal set for even your grant saying you must meet this or must meet that. It's going to be based on how well you do on the grant based on the outcomes of your clients.
Jacob, I'm not. I know the OSHA's not counting as a credential. Let me check with DOL about the OSHA certification counting as a measurable skill gain. I think if it's part of a training program, that it would.
They have to test.
Yeah. I mean, if they have an exam that they have to pass in order to be OSHA certified.
It's a really good question to get clarification
right,
on.
but I do need to get clarification because we've had other questions that I've presented if it was a gain, and they said that it would not be. So I'll get final clarification on that, and we'll get that out to you.
All right, any other questions? We've got a few more minutes here.
And like I said, my email and Jim's email are on the back of this PowerPoint. If you think of any other questions that you want to ask, please email or my number's there, and I will do the best to answer or either find the answer for you.
It looks like Eileen's writing or typing one, so we'll hang on to here a little bit.
She just said thanks.
Oh, is that it?
Oh, she did.
All right, it's a good point. Tara must be muted, and I don't know if Tammy's on, but I'm sure they've got your note, Eileen. It makes a lot of sense to me there, what you've wrote about. So Val's got a question, and anybody else? Still got a few minutes. If not, then we can wrap it up. Val's either got a really, really long question or something. Oh, no problem.
Oh, okay.
All right, we were waiting. We didn't want to cut you off if you had a question there, Val. So, well, that's all we have here. If you guys don't have anything else, thanks for your attention today, and have a great day.
Thank you.